Oh, that's it, eh? We're already up. That was fast. Wow. That Kojiko gigabit internet's working overtime. Good evening, everybody. It is February the 2nd, 2023. It's February. That's terrifying, so that's cool. Hope you're all doing well. I am indeed myself doing quite well. Bear with me for one moment. I had a bit of technical issues before getting this going. There was some weird noises coming through my audio equipment, and so I had to unplug everything and figure out what was making the noises and fix it. So all fixed. We're all set. We should be good. Good evening. Tonight, I just want to first off, before we get into the sponsors, this is February's Black History Month, and I was reading a little bit about some stories in Black American history that I was not too familiar with, and I just wanted to highlight a story just for the month. It has nothing to do with hockey, but I just thought this person is an absolute badass and deserves some more recognition. I want to just go quickly over Shirley Chisholm, just for this one time to celebrate the beginning of Black History Month, because there's some incredible stuff in Black American history over the years. So basically, Shirley Chisholm started out as a New York City woman doing the thing as you do, and decided to start mobilizing women voters. And sort of just by virtue of being involved in the political community, sort of rallying people, she fell into becoming a political candidate. I believe she got elected to a position with New York City. She was also arguing pretty heavily in favor, working with New York City to argue in favor of a multilingual society, trying to integrate a bunch of different cultures, and basically making the case that it shouldn't be like literacy tests shouldn't be part of some sort of citizenship in the state of New York. Or residency in the state of New York, I should say, and that literacy tests are discriminatory and all that wonderful stuff that now has helped make New York City kind of what it is. She did things like supported unemployment benefits for domestic workers who were full-time employees working in the home who might be let go. Tried to get disadvantaged students to go to college in New York City. She ended up getting elected to Congress. She was the first black member of Congress from the state of New York, which is incredible. First speech on the floor 6 years before the Vietnam War ended. She did not sit down like a lot of junior Congress people. She got up there and railed against the Vietnam War and faced a whole lot of scornful looks for that, supposedly, back in the 60s. In 1969, she did that. And the war went on for another 6 years. She ran for president. Now, this is where it gets really incredible. She ran for president in 1971, becoming the first black American, period, to run for a major party's nomination in the United States, which is incredible. She faced threats throughout the campaign. She's on record saying that part of the frustrating bit was that, even as a black American, she faced discrimination from black men in the U.S. government, trying to sort of hold her back a little bit. But she felt basically that there was a hierarchy of discrimination, and that being a woman was superseding. And this is a big part of the story of why people are all rallying around black women these days, because they are quite marginalized. But she ran for president. She won 28 delegates in the primary race. She didn't win, but she landed 3% of the vote in that primary process. And the fact that she was able to pull it off, like, some people saw her as a publicity stunt kind of person, but based on the policies and everything that I was reading about her standing up for and everything, pretty incredible stuff from her. She was the first woman to appear in a presidential debate on television, or a debate period, I should say. She stood up for compromise, calling out racism and everything on both sides of the aisle for the entire time she was in Congress through the 1980s. Just a wonderful person who I think doesn't really get the attention she deserves for being quite the trailblazer in a time when it would have been quite out of place, but a really incredible person. So I just wanted to highlight her before we get into the show tonight. Just was something that came up while I was riding the train on my commute this week. Sponsors of the show, thank you very much to McKean's Hockey for helping me out with the work that I do. Blue Line Hockey IQ program, really, really fun stuff. Over at Marcus Gustafson, BlueLineHockeyIQprogram.com. I have a guest spot there. There's a whole write-up that I've done there that you can get. You can get 10% off with the code Scouching. And if you scan the QR code above my head or click the link in the description, you'll be using my affiliate code for Fanatics, where I'll get a kickback on anything you buy in the store. So thank you very much for joining me. This is going to be a fun show. There's been a lot of work this past week with a lot of really fun players on the list. Just to run through them real quick. Started the week with Luca Cagnoni. He stayed the same on my list. I did a game of Kerry Terrence. He moved up a bit on my list. I did a game of Etienne Morin. He moved up a bit on my list. I did a game of Matvei Michkov. He stayed where he was. I moved Hoyt Stanley down a little bit. Callum Ritchie moved up a couple of spots. I did a game of Andre Molnar, and he continues to disappoint, which is sad because I love Andre Molnar, but, was not a great game, and I haven't seen a ton of great games of him, especially since coming to Erie. Another game of my boy Timur Mukhanov, and he moved up one more spot on my list. Moved Dylan Krakowian onto the watch list from the ranking list. I did a game of Austin Roast. He stayed on my watch list. I did a game of Leo Carlson and Adam Fantilli and Felix Nilsson and Will Smith. They all stayed the same. And I did games of Dalibor Dvorsky and Alex Ciernik, and they both moved up equally. They moved up 4 spots. I should also say that this week I did something that I'm not sure other people who do what I do. I hope that sentence made sense. I don't really know. But basically what I do once every couple of months is I just torpedo my list. I just blow it to smithereens and start over. Because I find that I get really stuck with almost forgetting what I think about players, and forgetting and losing track of how much I really appreciate certain players. Like, there might be players in the 3rd round that I've had a lot of really good viewings on, and at the time I'll go, yeah, I'll nudge them up a little bit, but then I'm like thinking about it 3 months later, and I'm going, okay, but I think I might still take this guy over the 10 guys in front of him, but it's because they're locked down in that lower level that they're kind of stuck there. So I don't know if anyone else does this, but if you're out there, I don't know. But I torpedoed the whole thing and started from scratch. So the ranking changes over this week, I believe, are about 75% from the most recent list, but not a whole lot changed at the top end, I found, but quite a lot changed beyond the first round, and I'm sure we'll take a look at that in the near future. What else is going on? I guess we can get into questions. That's about it. That's all the players I tracked this week. So let's get into some questions. Rob, hello. Oh, weird. All the names are colored on my YouTube monitor page. That's fun. The Sabres seem to covet prospects that excel at puck protection and possession. They have 3 second-round draft picks. Who do you see as potential second-round targets for the Sabres in that mold? Very good question, and I'm very curious to see who the Buffalo Sabres pull out of their hat for this game, or for this draft, I should say. Let me just pull up my list so you can feast your eyes on how this has turned out. In the second round, I mean, if you really want to gain guys that are great at possessing the puck and puck protection, that might be there in the second round. I mean, Tom Willander might be there. He could be a really cool guy to land on the defensive side of the game. If you've got 3 second round picks, you might be able to snag him a little bit later. I'm looking at a guy like, I don't know, maybe Idar Suniev as a potential guy in the mid to late second round. Who else? I doubt at this point that Grayson Sachin is going to be available in the second round, or at least later second round, but maybe. I want to say a guy like Martin Mishak or Charlie Stramel might be up there. I don't know if Stramel will be available in the second round, but he could be a good sort of big possession guy to have for possessing the puck on the perimeter. I mean, there's a lot of players where I also see it as like, well, they could be that if they sort of got their heads on straight, right? Like a little bit smaller, on the smaller side, guys like Will Whitelaw might be a nice sort of second round gamble, who I think has really, really good puck possession, and the skill level is kind of how he protects the puck as well. Dalibor Dvorsky, but he's not going to be there in the second round, could be up there as well. There's a few, yeah, but those are the ones that all come to mind right away that I might focus on. Callum Ritchie is on a hot streak, and I've seen some EP folks say he looks much better lately. Do you agree? The last game I did with Callum Ritchie was the best one I've seen him play all season. He was, he's a guy who, when I watch him, I kind of wonder what he's going to be in the NHL outside of like a third line sort of all-around center. Like, what he was doing in the game I tracked that was different was that he was very just making the right plays, like all the time. There wasn't really a situation. He found ways out of situations, but there wasn't really a situation where he was lost or didn't really have a plan. His passes were very well placed. I think he's trying. I think he's maybe not trying to do so much, and I think he's sort of sat back and sort of gotten into the flow of the game a little better. I mean, I still don't know if I see a first-round pick there. Like, he's in a tier for me that stretches from 18 to 44. And I feel like if you drafted him in the 20s, like, I can absolutely get it. Similar to a guy like Dalibor Dvorsky, where you're like, he just does a lot of the right things a lot of the time. But in terms of, like, NHL scoring upside, it might be a little more limited. But I would agree. I think Callum Ritchie has gotten better over the course of the year. The first few games I did of him, he just was very inactive. He was having trouble sort of driving results at 5-on-5 in any way. Some decent transition numbers for me, but the last game I did, he was much, much more efficient and much, much better, just with hitting his passes and hitting his targets and making the right decisions at the right times. Like, he just seems to be settled in, I guess, is what I would say, is how I would describe it. But I'd say he's been much better. Could he end up in my first round at the end of the year? Yeah, maybe, sure. But like, this range for me is extraordinarily close, and there's players with flaws, there's players with fewer flaws, and all kinds of stuff. So he's in that mix. I usually, you know me, if I'm not a huge fan of a player, I'm not a huge fan of a player, and I'll say it, but the fact that I'm coming around and going, okay, yeah, he's been better, and the last game I did was one of the best I've seen of him, I 100% for sure, I think that's been the case. Any thoughts on Carolina third rounder Alexander Nikishin? His stat line is wild for a 21-year-old KHL defenseman. Yeah, he's good. I don't know if his NHL upside sort of lines up with that point production. Like, I don't think he's going to be like a massive point producer in the NHL, but he's always been a really solid defensive guy with good mobility. He's a pretty big and built dude. I think he's utilizing his shot a lot more this year from what I've seen. Like, he's just getting the puck a lot more in the offensive zone. Like, I remember watching him when he was draft eligible, and he wasn't really crossing the center line that often. Like, it seems like St. Petersburg is like utilizing him a little bit more as a shooting threat, which, I mean, I don't see him as a massive shooting threat in the NHL. But I do think that he could be a solid sort of defense first guy. I don't know if it's going to line up to the production he's had in the KHL, but he's taken a lot of steps in the right direction. I think he shows a lot of signs of at least being some kind of NHL player. I don't think he's going to be like a top pair elite defenseman in the NHL, but I do think that there's enough there where he can at least put together some good defensive results, and the rest and the rest sort of works itself out as part of a unit of guys that can finish for him. Kind of like St. Petersburg, because that's how that team is built. They have like 4 first KHL lines, which is always hilarious. Can you name some dynamic centers with offensive upside that would be available towards the end of the consensus first and second round that you would recommend? Sure. So wait, what was the thing? Dynamic and offensive. Okay, those are good adjectives. I like those adjectives. Let's just sort by average rank. This is as up-to-date as I can get it. And these are players, the average ranks here are all the players ranked 4 or more times. So it might be a little more noisy than the other ones, the graph that I post. But yeah, so end of the first round or early second round, dynamic centers with offensive upside. Otto Stenberg might be a really good option there. I feel like he could slip to the second round, and he would be a really good option. Who else? I mean, I like Timur Mukanov, but he doesn't really play center. He hasn't really been playing center this year. Bradley Nadeau could be a good one. Grayson Sachin could be a really good one, but I think he's been playing wing most of the year. Let me double check that. Double check. Yeah, he's been playing wing every time I've seen him. I think the same goes for Denver Barkey. And he might even you may be able to get him later. Luca Pinelli's kind of alternated around a little bit, but he might be an option. I mean, I don't know. To keep it simple, I would say, Will Whitelaw, but I don't know if he's going to project as a center. I'd say Stenberg is an easy one if you wanted sort of a high upside early second round pick. That's probably the one that jumps out the most to me. And who's the other one? I don't know. I just talked about him. I must have. Now that I'm looking at this, there's not a ton. Oh, Bradley Nadeau was the other one. Those are the probably the ones that I would look at first. Odds the Leafs go all out and trade for Timo Meier at the deadline and then flip him at the draft to recoup assets. Maybe. I mean, I get like, look, the way I see it is paying a ton at the deadline. Like, the playoffs are a crapshoot anyway, right? Like, the Leafs don't really have that much in futures that I feel like San Jose would want, or that would be like massive game changers for them. Like, unless you trade a Matt Nyes, but like, I don't know. To me, Matt Nyes might be on the Leafs in the playoffs, and yeah, Timo Meier's a sick player for sure, but it's no guarantee. Like, the Leafs have gone out and spent at the deadline before, and it just hasn't really moved the needle all that much. Meier's a little bit of a different story, but man, I don't know. I also feel like at some point Kyle Dubas is going to go, yeah, I'm not sure I want to pay that price, and someone else is going to just go completely over the top for Timo Meier. Like, flipping him, if they do get him and flip him at the draft to recoup assets, then like, cool, that would be fun. I don't know what the heck they would get, but like, it does remove, I think, some leverage from Toronto, because they're the ones who are like, well, we want to get rid of him now. And teams are like, well, you want to get rid of him now, so why would we pay the kind of price that you paid to get him in the first place? And then you end up, and if the Leafs get bounced in the second round, then like, what was all the work for? So I don't know. I'm always more of a fan of trusting the guys in the room that you've got, especially when your team is already so good. Like, they lost last night, whatever, but they're still doing really well in terms of the regular season. They nearly beat the Tampa Bay Lightning last year without needing to go out and make a big acquisition at the deadline. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about what they could do, but I get the feeling that Meier might be a bit of a long shot, especially considering that there might be other teams that might be more willing to pay a lot more just to get their guy and take the risk. Because Kyle Dubas doesn't strike me as a person who like really takes on more risk than he should. Like, I think that Nick Foligno trade was probably about as risky as he gets, and it did not work out. I don't know. But that's just me. If we go to the meme timeline where Montreal picks 1 and 2 due to both the Habs and Cats picks winning the lottery, would you consider trading second overall if you were Hughes? No, I wouldn't. I don't know. It depends on the deal, right? Like, what would I trade second overall for? Like, if Edmonton wants to trade me Connor McDavid, I'm trading the second overall pick, right? Like, I really like Adam Fantilli. I think I would say any draft, I'd say 2020, 2021, 2022, probably not 2019, but he would really push Jack Hughes. 2018, him and Dahlin, again, I'd say would be neck and neck for me. 2017, I feel like he'd go first overall that year. Like, in a lot of years, he's either right there at first overall discussion or second overall. And I just have I love Adam Fantilli's game. I think that it's not perfect, but boy, it could get real close in a few years. I really, really like what his potential is. And if you could get him and Connor Bedard, that's tantalizing, especially in a place like Montreal where they trend a little younger. Someone mentioned not over Makar. I'm not talking redraft. I'm saying at the time, I'm thinking of like who were the top names in 2017, for example. Like Cale Makar was a top, at worst, top 10 name going into the draft, but nobody was talking about him at first overall. But anyway, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, if I look at Montreal and say they need more on defense and they could use something solid in net, I would, like, if someone came along and was offering, like, I don't know, like if Florida came calling and wanted their pick back and it was like Spencer Knight plus, then maybe I would think about it and just you get your goalie, you get whatever, but that's really stretching it for me. I would have a hard time saying no to drafting both Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli this season. Do you have any thoughts on Matthias Havlid's triumphant return? No, I don't, because I didn't know he was back. I didn't know he was back because I don't pay attention at all. Oh, Somehow I woke up Siri with that. But he has been, he's got 3 points in 13 games. He's been back for quite a while then. That's cool. I have not seen him, so I'll have to go check him out. But I like him. I like Matthias Havlid quite a bit. In a draft like this one, what does a trade deadline deal have to involve to make trading away a first-round pick worth it? Also, Chaz Lucius, 15 points in 6 games. Go Jets, go. I mean, it depends on the team situation that you're in, right? Like, if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, for example, or if I'm the Boston Bruins, do they even have a first-round pick this year? I feel like they do. I don't know, unless they traded it in the Lindholm trade, but I need to check. I'm checking. The Bruins are here. Yeah, so the Bruins have a first-round pick and no second. So, like, I don't know. I just fundamentally disagree with the idea of trading a first round pick for a rental. I know, even though it, like, most of the time it works out fine, you get your rental, and most late first round picks don't work out anyway. But I don't know. It really, it's hard to say, right? Like, it depends on who's on the table, right? If I can get someone that is younger, on the younger side, like in their early mid-20s, and I've got some term on the other side, and the opposing team is just in a rebuild, then sure, I would consider trading first-round picks and, like, using them to land that player, or a first-round pick, right? Someone with term that isn't insanely expensive, that I know has a role on my team, that would stick around for a while. I'm not a believer, period, in going out and getting a guy just for the playoff run and, like, down the stretch. Like, I don't think the cost is worth it. But if you're fundamentally making a change to your team, and the only time you can really do that trade is around the trade deadline, then absolutely I would go for it. But I just saw someone comment Luke Schenn might get Vancouver a late first. Like, I'm never giving a late first round pick up for Luke Schenn. I'm just not. You know, like, I look at this year's draft, like, Dmitry Simashev might be available in the late first this year. I'm not, like, though there are players in this year's draft that I seriously would absolutely think could be huge impact players, at least offensively. Maybe not Simashev potentially, but, you know, there's going to be good players that slip to the end of the first round. Like, I don't know. It's really tough. I know there's like the NHL fan in me that goes, yeah, but late first round picks usually don't work out. But if you play your cards right and you do your homework, you can use late first round picks on, like, really good swings, and you can turn those really good swings into assets down the road anyway. So it's tough. But yeah, I for a guy like Luke Schenn, I'm not doing it. But, like, for Timo Meier, if I've got the cap space and, like, he wants an extension with my team and, like, I can keep him for a while, potentially. But also, if you extend Timo Meier, like, it's going to be one of those situations where you get a few good years out of him, but the dollar figure is going to be really high and the backstretch might not be great. I don't know. I'm thinking on the fly here. It's a lot. It really depends on the player, and it really depends on the situation your team is in and, like, how bad your needs are, I would say. I've been hearing more and more of Zach Benson being a potential center. Is there any substance to that? Has he even gotten any reps there? He has not played center in the games I have seen him play, but that doesn't mean he can't play center. I mean, he plays a style where I think he could play center, like, in a way that Marco Rossi kind of did when he was a draft eligible, just, like, all over the ice. You know, no one really cared that he was 5'9", and he could really get around the ice. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like you could try it, but I don't know. I really love Zach Benson's play along the boards. I love how he's able to get off the boards. Really, really quickly. He's got pretty good hands to help him do the same thing. Like, could he play center? Sure, but I don't know. Like, the NHL's really hard, and I don't want to be the guy where it's like undersized players can't play center, because I just fundamentally disagree with that. But I don't know. He's played wing all season. He's played really, really well playing on the wing. You could try it, but I would not be surprised if in the NHL, just by virtue of not having a ton of reps at center this year, it's a little bit of a grind and a bit of an uphill battle. But you don't want to discourage him. But if he wants to play center, I would certainly entertain the idea and see where it goes. But he hasn't. And I would not be surprised if a player like Benson is just better off being a winger as he is. I have a little bit of concerns about how quick he actually is and how much more you're going to sort of squeeze out of him over the next few years, which to me kind of indicates that maybe the role as a center might be a little bit much for him in the NHL. But I don't know. At the end of the day, he's going to be a great winger. One way or the other, I think he comes out on top. Thoughts on Alex Ciernik? Seems to be playing very well with Vasterviks. Yes, he is. I tracked a game today of him. He was great. Not perfect, not the best. I mean, it's fascinating. Sometimes when I'm doing my tracking work, I will go through like little pockets of my list and compare the guys in those pockets. So especially ones that can be directly comparable, right? So like I have Alex Ciernik ranked ahead of Dalibor Dvorsky, and I've had that all season. And I have my reasons for that. And I watch Ciernik at the junior level this year, and I've been kind of disappointed, right? But Mikhail Holm and I, good friend of the show, Mikhail Holm, he and I talk a lot, and he's based in Sweden, in case you don't know. And he and I talk a lot. And one thing that he and I talk a lot about is the idea that once a player plays at the men's level in Sweden and goes back to junior, their GOS meter, like give a crap meter, it decreases. Like it just kind of goes down, and they kind of just sort of float around, and they know that they're capable of playing at a higher level because they've done it, and it just kind of slows things down. But then they go back to the men's level, and it's like lights out, right? Otto Stenberg has been, in my view, like great in the SHL over the last little while, with some flashes of really tremendous play that I just have not seen at the junior level this year. And I think the same is the case for Alex Ciernik, because every single time I've seen him in the Hockey Allsvenskan, he's been great. He's fast, he's intense, he challenges guys really, really well. He's skilled, he's got a great shot. Like, there's a lot to really, really like about Alex Ciernik. Again, he's not perfect. He can kind of, like, he's at his best when he sort of just settles into the play, plays a little less selfishly. Not that he plays selfish, but when he tries to take on too much, it doesn't work. Another thing he does is he's got like Brad Lambert syndrome, where it's like he's fast and goes all game, but once he gets the puck, sometimes he just like doesn't know what to do with it, right? There was one play in the game I watched, it was today, where he stopped up. He entered the offensive zone with control, got to about the top of the face-off circle, stopped up, slowed down a little, took a survey, and threaded a pass across the offensive zone, waited for a gap, and hit the defenseman, and had a shot assist there. I need to see, like, I personally want to see more of that, that kind of thing, because he can drop a shoulder, pull the puck wide, and drive to the front of the net, and try to shovel a puck in front of the net, or take a scoring chance himself. He can do that, but like, sometimes you have to be able to also stop up and start a cycle or get an offensive chance in a different way, like diversify things rather than just go. And so with guys like him and Lambert and Fabian Lysell, like they all kind of have these echoes of that issue. But I've loved him. I think Ciernik is, if you get him in the second round, I think you're thrilled. And like I said, I mean, I go through my list and go through little pockets of guys. And one of the guys that, he's inextricably linked to is Dalibor Dvorsky. And I did a game of his this morning on my way to work, and I did Ciernik on the way home. And it was blatantly obvious to me why I have one in Ciernik ahead of Dalibor Dvorsky. Now, they're close in terms of they're in the same tier. I think Dvorsky is like 6 spots behind. But for me, I see way more potential to drive results in a hockey game consistently at both ends out of Ciernik than I do out of Dvorsky. Like, I really like Dvorsky's mind for the game, like his ability to sort of see his options, curl pucks and change angles and find line mates and everything. But his feet, to me, are a problem. I think they really, really limit him, like, in a lot of ways. In transition, in the offensive zone, he can't really even challenge guys one-on-one. Like, he has to dish the puck off to someone else. I like his defensive mind. He's able to cover guys on defensive cycles really well and sticks to guys really, really well. But I just look at that and go, well, yeah, I see Dvorsky as maybe a guy who you put on the wing on a power play, and he's your third-line center who doesn't really drive a whole lot of offense at 5-on-5, but definitely drives, definitely can play on the power play and suppresses results defensively at the center position. Whereas Ciernik, he's a winger, so that's a little bit of a different equation, but he's a guy who chips in defensively, drives play up the ice with possession. He puts guys on their heels. He's got a lot of skill. He can really challenge guys one-on-one. He drives to the net, something that I just have not seen out of Dalibor Dvorsky at all this season. So in any case, so when I look at both of those guys back to back, it's like, and they're at the same level of hockey, right? And I look at it and I go, yeah, like I think I would rather have Alex Ciernik, and just bet on him just being able to keep up in the NHL a lot better than a guy like Dalibor Dvorsky. Could Dvorsky improve? Of course. But I love Alex Ciernik, I guess, is the answer to your question. I think he's been great. Vostovic is giving him a good chance. They're giving him good situational play time, and he's producing pretty well. The game I did, he nearly scored in that game. I don't think he got any points of 5-on-5 in that game, but he played very, very well. Thoughts on McKeen's top 32? I was definitely surprised to see Bjarnason as the highest-rated goalie and Dragicevic at 16 as the second-best defenseman. Yeah, so, I'm not technically a scout with McKeen's. They bounce the list off of me and Sam McGilligan just for, like, tweaking purposes. And, in my view, like, I don't know, there's a lot that I don't agree with personally, but that's okay. The best way for me to sort of do what I needed to do this year for this list was just give a list of guys that I think definitely should just be bumped up quite a bit, like just the lowest guys that I think should be higher. And they did that, which is fine. Would I have Bjarnason, in the top 20? Probably not. I've seen him a bit, and I'm not a huge goalie person, but I've been actively trying to learn more about goaltending this year, and like, especially after having seen guys like Sebastian Kosa and Yaroslav Askarov and Jesper Wallstedt over the years, and like learning to recognize what an objectively good goaltender looks like. And I look at that and go, well, yeah, like, do I see the same kind of things out of Carson Bjarnason? Not really. For me, Michael Hrabal brings a lot to the table that I really like. And a couple of other goalies, Jacob Fowler and Trey Augustine, are up that alley, but like I wouldn't draft those guys in the first round. Hrabal maybe in the late first for me. But I'm also really hesitant to draft guys in the first round that play net. And to me, there will be players ranked higher than Michael Hrabal that I would be able to draft in the first, second round. And there might be goalies later on that might just be nice swings to take that aren't the top-rated guys. So we'll see what happens. Dragicevic is the second-ranked defenseman. I'm not sure exactly where that comes from. I might need to go talk to Derek Neumeier about that because I don't see it. I really don't. I know he's scoring a lot of points, but I watch him and I just don't know who he is in the NHL. I don't know the role he could play. I just don't know. If you want to draft him top 20 and like try to reprogram him into whatever, by all means, do your thing, shoot your shot. But that's not my jam, especially in the first round, right? I was talking to someone in hockey in the biz, as they say, a couple weeks ago maybe, and he brought up a really good point when it comes to the draft, and especially in the first round, right? The first round, you're the one getting up there on stage, right? You're going up on stage in front of millions of people, all the fans in your fan base, and you say a name. When you say that name, you better be really, really, really sure that that is a guy that is going to play an important role in your team. Because if he is not, turns out to be not that, then you can lose your job, right? It's a little questionable in terms of logic with how this works, but it's a fact. And so that when I have guys like William Whitelaw in the first round, and he was saying, he asked me about him. He's like, well, what do you think about William Whitelaw? And I said, well, I think in terms of talent, he's a first round guy, but he's a long ways away. And he goes, yeah, so you won't draft him in the first round. You'd be crazy. And I said, well, yeah. It's like, so then why is he ranked in your first round? It's like, well, because if it were me, like, I could do it with a late first round pick, but there's always going to be guys that I have ranked higher than him available, and as a second or third, I'd be able to do it. And it's like, and the other thing that like a first round pick adds to the thing is like the timeline shortens, right? Like expectations get quicker, whether you like it or not, right? Like Timothy Liljegren was a first round pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs. People 3 years in, after 3 years in the AHL, were like, what's wrong with Timothy Liljegren? Like, why isn't he like in the NHL yet, and now he's great. You know, it's like the timeline speeds up and the pressure can get really high. To me, William Whitelaw is like 3 years in college away from being an NHL player. Maybe 2 years in college, and then you go straight to the AHL for a season or two. Like, he's a ways away. But if you play your cards right and you're patient, you could end up with a great player. But if you're in the first round and you draft a guy like that, it is the pressure to put him in the NHL is pretty strong, especially if he goes to Wisconsin next year and scores 45 points in however many games. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with a player like that. But when it comes to a guy like Dragicevic, like, am I going up there on the microphone and saying I'm drafting Lucas Dragicevic, and because I don't want to take that risk. If someone else does, by all means, but there's a lot of more interesting players that I would rather have. Oh, wow, that tastes not great. Okay, this is a Pure Life mango, peach, and pineapple sparkling water from, I believe, Walmart. I believe it's a Walmart brand. It's not great. Where were we? Thoughts on goalie Denis Utenkov? Unreal stats, who looks like he has the blueprints for an NHL goalie. I saw this question come in before the show. I had never heard of him, and I've never seen him play, but you're right. A .939 save percentage is quite good. But I did some number pulling from Instat, and he, of all of the goaltenders I have Instat data on, he has the fourth easiest workload out of anybody when it comes to dangerous shot attempts and high and medium danger. And I believe this is the third easiest in high danger attempts. So he is facing a lot of shots from really far out. So if he didn't have a high save percentage, it would be problematic. And his high danger save percentage is very bad. When you include medium danger, it gets more average, I would say. Like an 850 from that range at 5-on-5 is about average. So yeah, I don't know. With especially since he's 6'1", like, I don't know. I hate to be like goalies can't be small, but the equation there just isn't quite right for me. If we're talking about goaltenders that are kind of off the board that might be interesting, maybe a Yegor Zavragin, but I watched him and I wasn't really sold on what I was seeing there. Or was I thinking about the other guy that plays with him? Yeah, that was Yevgeny Volokhin. Zavragin might be an interesting late round guy. Who else? Alessio Brun is a guy that I actually kind of liked in the very, very brief games that I watched him. He's playing in Switzerland. Samuel Urban, I think, is an interesting option for maybe a late round pick. But yeah, I don't know. Wasn't super the numbers for that player, what's his name? Whatever his name is, what's his face? For Cheka, whatever. My God, now I'm just looking for his name. Why can't I find it? Where did he go? Oh, Denis Utenkov. Yeah, if that's the kind of stuff he's putting up, he's kind of, to me, middle of the pack. I'm exhausted. Tell me a bedtime story about Logan Stankoven being amazing in your best Sir David Attenborough impression. I'm sorry. I hope that between the time you wrote that question and now, you've fallen asleep. Because I'm not sure I can do a David Attenborough impression. I don't know. I might have to like workshop it with my partner, because she usually has a good ear for good and bad impressions. So maybe rain check that. I hope you sleep okay. I mean, this show on its own doesn't put you to sleep. Like, really? People say I have a good radio voice. I mean, maybe that's true, but this must put most people to sleep, I would think. How do you think Mishak and Urban will do in the USHL? Good, I hope. I mean, I think Mishak's going to be just fine in the USHL. It'll be the first time he's playing against junior competition consistently since 2 seasons ago, which to me matters. He's a big, heavy, fast guy with a lot of skill. I hope he gets some more freedom to play with the puck a little more and try out that skill that he's got, because he does have it. And Urban, Urban's a we'll see guy, like, right? He's on my list as a watch list guy, because it's like, I don't want to forget he exists, and he was kind of neat in the game that I watched of him, or 2 games I watched of him, whatever it was. And like, I don't know, he's facing an insane workload and like playing pretty well. against men in the Slovakian second division. So like, let's see how it goes. So I don't know. He's a we'll see guy, but it would be fun if he was good. But Mishak, I think, should be just fine. Darren Dreger has recently said that the Habs aren't willing to trade Josh Anderson. Oh God, unless the return is spectacular. How many blood sacrifices do I need to fix this unholy curse? I'm not sure what you mean by the second part, but over the years, people have really learned to be very wary of the kinds of things that Darren Dreger goes public with, especially around here in Toronto. Keep in mind, Kent Hughes is a player agent, or former player agent, I should say, and Darren Dreger was clearly carrying water for what's his name, Mitch Marner's agent, the whole time they were negotiating that contract in public, which was an awful time to be in Toronto. So I'd get the feeling that that might be even Kent Hughes himself or someone in his circle going to Darren Dreger and being like, we don't want to trade Josh Anderson. Just so you know, we don't want to trade him. But if someone really wants him, we'll think about it, but you gotta, bring the gabagool, And I don't know. I just look at Josh Anderson and go like, it doesn't pass the smell test, right? Like, if I'm the Montreal Canadiens and knowing how I've interacted with Habs fans over the year and what I've heard from them, like, Josh Anderson is a good player, I guess, but like, that doesn't pass the smell test. So to me, something smells a little funky. And we'll see what happens. Because if I'm Montreal, I don't know. Like, Anderson's a good player, but like, what are you keeping him for, right? Like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. What do you think? What do you think of Quinton Page? So that was a name I saw come in before the stream, and I Googled him, and apparently I've looked at his player profile. I think I remember this guy for Peterborough. He's a real small, zippy boy, like a lot of skill and goes real fast, but doesn't really do much with it. Like, he only has 2 points this season in 26 games. I haven't seen a ton of him, but I do remember looking him up because he was kind of fun. So it might be worth taking another look at him. I imagine he's playing quite limited minutes. It doesn't say on Elite Prospects, but that's okay. But he might be one of those guys that just sort of caught my eye, and I Googled him. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he was a small, really zippy, really skilled guy, and I'll take another look at him whenever I get the chance. Brian Stewart, arguably the worst Scouching patron on the planet. I'm joking. I love Brian. But if you sign up for the Patreon, you too can get insulted by me live on camera for an audience of 50 people live. Anything legit behind Nick Lardis' post-trade surge production? Yeah, I love Nick Lardis. I'm really pleasantly surprised that Nick Lardis is off to the start that he's with the Bulldogs, I want to say. Yeah, with the Bulldogs, like 16 points in 10 games. Nick Lardis is really fun. I mean, I will need to track a game of him with Hamilton to see what's kind of changed. With Peterborough, I mean, I'm going to pull up his data because I don't want to get it wrong. Now, granted, I haven't done a ton of Nick Lardis from this game or from this season, but he's a finisher first and foremost, right? Like, I mean, it makes sense. He got 9 goals in 10 games, but he's a guy who is quick, especially sort of on its edges, and just like, he's one of these guys where you think you have him covered in the defensive zone, and then he's like 3 feet, he's 3 feet off to the side with his stick ready to go. You hit him with a pass and it's in the back of the net before you can even blink, right? He does that a lot. Like, he drives a lot of really dangerous shot attempts from really dangerous space a lot. I see here that he has created 72% of his team's shot attempts with him on the ice. He's taken 64% of the shot attempts. He's a volume shooter, which is not always the most impressive thing to me. But if you want like a mid-round pick to be used on a guy who can finish, I mean, I feel like Nick Lardis will be there. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy. But you leave him uncovered in the offensive zone, and he'll find space, and he will put it in the net. Like, he is a very, very good shooter. And I've come away really, really liking Nick Lardis in the games I've seen. Not a perfect hockey player whatsoever. Like, his puck management is not great, and he's very much a finisher. But again, my philosophy, like, finishers are worth a little less to me, but one, he's really good at it, and two, like, if you can get him in the mid rounds, I think you've done really, really well. So yeah, I'm a fan of Nick Lardis, and I'll have to track a game of him with Hamilton. That's probably a good thing for me to write down so I don't forget. Let me just do that because I keep a list of names that I really should go back and check out again. So I will do that. Nick Lardis. Okay. But I like him. He's fun. Grayson Sachin's got to be a first rounder. Dynamic skill, good producer, good involvement on a stacked team. Yeah, I have him in the first round now. Again, when I obliterated my list and rebuilt it from scratch, he ended up in my first round. And especially after the top prospects game, like, you don't want to judge a player too much off of one game, but he went into that game and I had been seeing him over the course of the season and I was like, hey, he's not perfect, but he does a lot of things really well. You know, he's more than skilled enough to make it work and blah, 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 blah. And at the top prospects game, he just went off. And yeah, so I get the feeling that Sachin is maybe a good late first round pick, early second rounder. You know, if you draft a guy like Leo Carlson or something in the early first round and Grayson Sachin's your second guy at like 36 or 37 or something, I guess it wouldn't be that late. It might be like 34 or 35. It's a pretty decent pickup. And I really like Grayson Sachin. I've grown to like him a lot more over the course of the season. I think he's gotten a lot better over the course of the year as well, just in terms of feeling comfortable with his own game and really sort of picking his spots really well to use skill and use some speed and drop a shoulder and get around guys. Like, he does a lot of things well. So yeah, I like Sachin and he's in my first round now. He's at 25. I don't know if that's a little too high, but 25, sure. Moore versus Leonard. I go with Oliver Moore. I think Oliver Moore has a ton of upside. I think he's one of the more fun sort of offensive rush guys. He's really skilled in terms of using his skill well, and he does that really well, just pulling pucks around guys, making new lanes, and connecting on offensive plays. He's probably, I would say, the best analytics player that I've tracked this year that isn't named Connor Bedard. Let me pull that up to make sure, but he is right up there. That doesn't make sense. That can't be right. That doesn't look right to me, but maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to double check that. Yeah, that ain't right. Okay. In any case, my math sheet is not working. So let me try the other one, the backup. That one's not working either. Unless it's just very delayed and I need to refresh the page, I'll try that. But anyway, Oliver Moore looks great in the data. Oh, there it goes. So it just needed to be refreshed. Yeah, I mean, like, in a lot of metrics, he's keeping up with some of the best players in the entire draft. He's ended up in my top 5. Yeah, he's at 5 on my board. He's just gotten up higher and higher and higher. I love Oliver Moore. Ryan Leonard, I mean, I like Ryan Leonard too. He's a really physical, rambunctious shooter. Like, we're just talking about Josh Anderson. There's echoes there. Like a guy who can get up the ice really well. You know, maybe not the best puck distributor, maybe not the most well-rounded hockey player, but boy, that guy can score goals. Boy, he loves to throw his weight around and like get into the thick of it and bounce off guys and hit guys into the boards. He loves that stuff. So he's a great player too. I'd say top 15. He does have some of these traits that I think, you know, limit NHL upside, like effectiveness, I guess, in the NHL in a number of situations. But I don't really mind that much because he's also he just does a lot of things that are important really, really well. Yeah, he's 15 on my board, and I think that's about reasonable. He won't go much higher, but I also don't see him going much later. Thoughts on Swedish eligible Felix Nilsson? Love him. I love Felix. I tracked a game of his in the SHL. I've done 2 games of his in the SHL. The game that I just did, he barely touched the puck because his team barely touched the puck. I wouldn't lay it at his feet at all. I thought he played pretty well in that game overall when he did touch the puck, which was, again, not very often. But at the J20 level, he's just remarkable. He's a really high intensity, hardworking guy, drives a lot of results at both ends of the ice. Really, really involved going both directions, especially offensively. Making really, really smart plays and just being a guy that you love to watch. I really like Felix Nilsson. I had no idea who he was before this season, but he's been a pleasant surprise this year. He doesn't waste his scoring chances. He does a lot of things really, really well. Seeing him in the SHL has been a nice, pleasant surprise, even if he might be a little bit limited with a few different things in terms of his foot speed and true level of skill, but you can work on those things, and I think he's got a good sort of foundation to work with. The first Vancouver Canucks Bo Horvat trade question of the night. I'm sure there's more. Did Canucks win the trade? Did the Canucks win the trade? I don't think anybody won the trade. I think both teams got what they wanted, right? The Islanders, Bo Horvat to the Islanders, like, when you really think about it, makes so much sense. They've got Anders Lee and Brock Nelson, like, guys, big dudes who can score, and they're just rough and tumble dudes, They play that Lou Lamoriello style, right? And that's good, and I think Bo Horvat makes a lot of sense. Did they pay quite a bit to get him? Like, the way I see it is they paid Aatu Ratu and a first-round pick, whatever, like with the conditions, but they paid that to upgrade from Anthony Beauvillier, who always struck me as a bit of a strange New York Islander led by Lou Lamoriello, to Bo Horvat. Now, how much of an upgrade is that? I'd say it's a pretty decent upgrade. Bo Horvat's having a heck of a season, but even setting that aside, I like Bo Horvat as a player, and I get it. Like, would I have traded Aatu Ratu and a first-round pick? Probably not. I probably would have rather kept Ratu, but again, like, I get the New York, never ever count out the New York Islanders, right? Like, year over year, they've kind of squeaked into the playoffs and then gone really deep, right? You go on a hot goalie run for the down stretch of the year. You got a guy like Bo Horvat, and maybe he hits 50 goals this year. Maybe. And you squeak your way into the playoffs, and then who cares what happened in the regular season? You're starting over. They shut things down and win a bunch of games 2-1. You never know what can happen, right? And then Lou Lamoriello looks like a friggin' genius making this trade, because who cares about Aatu Ratu and a first-round pick and Anthony Beauvillier? Because rings, baby. So I think it's too early to tell. Personally, if it was a rental deal, I think if Bo Horvat walks in July, then yeah, I think they paid, unless they win a Stanley Cup, they paid way too much, right? But it still remains to be seen. I guess what I'm saying is it's too early to tell for who won the trade. Because again, Aatu Ratu is not a perfect player. He's a flawed player. There's a reason he slipped in the draft. He slipped way too far, but there are reasons he slipped, and he hasn't been like incredible in the AHL. He's been a very good scorer, and there's a lot to like, and I feel like you put him with the right players and he could be a good NHL player. But I don't know. I'm not going to, like, he was ranked in the middle of the first round for me in the year he was drafted. And like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like he's the first overall caliber player everyone thought he was when he was 15. But clearly things have been going pretty well for him so far, in terms of scoring goals and putting the puck in the net. And that's a good thing. So it's good for the Canucks to get that. I think the Canucks got good stuff out of the deal. And I think the Islanders, like, shoot your shot, man. Like, I would have sat that one out, but like, maybe I just don't have the whatever you want to call it. Maybe I don't have the right attitude about it. I don't know. But that good for Lou. I mean, this is what Lou Lamoriello does. He's going for it, right? Just win, baby. Besides Bedard, who's the most electric prospect in this draft? Probably Adam Fantilli. I'd say Fantilli or Moore. The game I did of Matvei Michkov was excellent. It was the best game I've ever seen Matvei Michkov play. Going to Sochi has done wonders for him, in my view. Just, he seems like a player who's being coached, and coached decently well. Like, as opposed to in St. Petersburg, it really felt like he was just kind of doing whatever he wanted and, cheating for offense a lot. Whereas in Sochi, like, there's a lot more going on. And it just goes to show that, like, for, like, I don't know, like, I put him where I thought he belonged based on the play in St. Petersburg, but now that he's up in the KHL and playing some decent minutes, and, his team's not great, but he's having a really good impact on the game for his team, and I think that's really, really notable. But I don't know if I like him and Oliver Moore, I think, are up there. Will Smith in certain moments can be unbelievably fun. Andrew Crystal as well. There's a lot of guys I think who are like they'll give you goosebumps at times, right? There's a lot of guys that will do that. Outside the obvious, who do you think has the highest ceiling? I mean, I think Dmitry Simashev has a massive ceiling. I like offense, defense. There's so many flashes, especially for a guy that's 6'5". There's so many flashes where, if you just refine that skill a little bit more, get him to be a bit stronger and keep him lean, like keep him mobile and quick on his feet, but like, build him out as a strong boy, but like without losing too much of that feet and like making him too much of a chonk. I would look at him and see a guy that has a tremendous amount of upside. Because the things I've seen him do in spurts are just really, really impressive. Thoughts on Lucas Dragicevic being above Sandin Pelika and Gulyayev? We kind of went over that. I disagree with it, but Derek Neumeyer is doing his thing, I don't see it with Dragicevic that high, but whatever. How high do I have Tanner Molendyk? I've got Molendyk at 29 most recently. I really like him. Again, if you want to just bet on a kid who can skate and play some defense and throw pucks around the ice really, really effectively, then Molendyk is a really good option. Maybe more of a second round pick for me. Like, I don't know if I would go up there and draft him in the first round, but if you're at like 40th overall, you could do a lot worse than Tanner Molendyk. How have the Djurgården trio progressed? I know Minnesota Wild fans have been happy with Ogren's season. Yeah, I think him and Östlund have played pretty well. Lekkerimaki, I think, has been a lot more up and down, a lot more mixed. So yeah, I don't know. I think Ogren has, to me, been the most impressive, which makes sense because I had him ranked the highest out of all three. But they've all played well when I've seen them, but definitely Ogren and Östlund have taken a step. I think Östlund's gained a step in terms of speed and using his skill at high speed. Ogren's gotten stronger and I think a little bit quicker, maybe not faster, but like just more agile. So yeah, I've liked how they've played. Any thoughts on Samuel Johannesson? Seems to have decent stats for a 22-year-old defenseman in the SHL, but I think Columbus let his rights expire. Yeah, I remember watching him a little bit, and like, yeah, he was a decent puck mover, a good skilled defenseman. Like, I'm sure there's someone out there willing to give him a contract somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen him a little bit here and there. I would not be surprised to see him come over to North America again or come over to North America and give it a shot, even if it's not with Columbus. In honor of Black History Month, is there a player of color you think should be more hyped than they have been so far? Do you mean in the if you mean in the draft? I mean, I get the like Zayd Wisdom's brother Zachariah, I feel like should be drafted maybe late. Like, he's a really fun player to watch. Really aggressive like his brother and like goes to the net and has a really good shot. He's been fun with Cedar Rapids. Maybe not my most favorite Cedar Rapids guy, but like if you want a bottom six, really just intense player who can score, I think that there could be a good player there. I might be mistaken, but I believe Matthew Soto with Kingston is a player of color. I could be wrong, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But I believe he is. And I love Matthew Soto's game. Like, he is fun. I mean, I think there are limitations in his game that really limit off on like the upside of his pick. But if you get him in the middle rounds and, you bet long term that he, for me, it's just about working on his skating mechanics and just getting stronger. He's a guy who, I think brings a ton of skill and just a ton of just attack, really dynamic player. He can make a play. He's a great shooter. It's just, I look at him and I go, yeah, like he's one of these guys that moves his feet a lot and doesn't really go very quickly. So yeah, I don't know. I get the feeling that he is an interesting one for that particular question. I think someone mentioned that he is Hispanic. Okay, so in the same alley, but he's not a black hockey player. but he is a player of color, and I think he's a guy who deserves some more eyeballs on him. Who would be your pick to win the, what is it, Memorial Cup, I believe you said? Oh boy, there's a lot of questions going on here. Okay. What is it? Who would be your pick to win the Memorial Cup as of today? It's a good question. The Regina Pats. No, I'm kidding. Who is even on CHL top teams 2023? Have they even released one yet? Oh, I mean, Seattle is the easy answer. I'd go Seattle, and if I want a dark horse, maybe Kamloops. Who's hosting the Memorial Cup this year anyway? It is in Kamloops. Okay, so the Kamloops qualifies anyway. So yeah, I'd say Kamloops or Seattle. Those would be the teams that I would go for. I love the Kamloops Blazers a ton. Thoughts on Nico Huhtinen being the best under 20 Liga scorer this season? Well, I mean, the boy could always shoot, and he's always been big. I like Nico Huhtinen. I'm glad he got drafted. I still wonder about NHL projection, because when I've watched him in the Liga this year, like, it's like he's kind of driving to the net in the offensive zone or finding space in the offensive zone and just cranking slap shots or wrist shots like that, and that's fine. But I always sort of go, okay, like, he's coming along well, but we'll see with Huhtinen, because there's more to the game than that, but he's been good. Definitely better. A lot of worse players, I think, got drafted before him when we look back. I think that's not controversial, but still a bit of a ways to go, I think. Oh, geez. Whitney's Mill Tank is back. Hello. Why do you think Gabe Perreault was always considered to be the fourth out of the four NTDP big guns? Because everybody else... Gabe Perreault... Here's the way I've sort of seen Gabe Perreault recently. Like, everybody, it's almost a meme now how I've talked about Joshua Waugh over the last few years. And like, what Joshua is now to me is kind of like what Gabe Perreault is now, right? So I like Gabe Perreault because he's a complimentary guy. Let me just pull him up here. I think he's in my first round now. No, he's not. 33, but he's knocking on the door. Like, he is a very, very, very good complimentary player. Like, but he's still a complimentary player. Like, a guy like Will Smith playing with Ryan Leonard. Will Smith is the guy that plays with the puck. Ryan Leonard is the guy that makes smash and go in a straight line real fast and shoot puck. Good. Gabe Perreault is the guy that adds the extra moves so that the puck far more likely goes in the net, right? Like, he is the guy where Will Smith passes it to him and Perreault waits that extra half second to bait the goalie that extra little bit, then threads a pass across the crease to Ryan Leonard and bobs your uncle the puck's in the net. That is what Gabe Perreault does. You know, Gabe Perreault does stuff like he really lacks a lot of pace, really lacks a lot of skating, but you put him with some fast and talented finishers and possession forwards, and he'll just fit in and just make the simple plays more often than not and do really well doing it. It's not flashy, it's not pretty, it's I think risky to draft in the first round, but he is better than I thought he was at the beginning of the year. Like, there's only so many times I can watch a player like Gabe Perreault expecting him not to be that impressive, and I sit back and go, oh, that was a smart play. Oh, that was a smart... That puck probably doesn't go in without Gabe Perreault doing that. And it's like, okay, yeah, he's got these limitations that might hold him back, but, like, that's pretty cool. Like, that the kid can do the thing, right? Like, he's one of these guys where I think it might be a little easy to write him off, but you'd be foolish to write him off. Because whenever I've watched Gabe Perreault, I'm like, okay, like, not much is happening. Oh, cool, look at this. Look at him go. That was fun. So yeah, I like Gabe Perreault, but just the other guys, I think, just bring more projectability to the game. I find that guys like start out better than what Gabe Perreault looks like now and sort of regress to finding a role like Gabe Perreault in the NHL rather than they stay this way all the way to the NHL. But I think that's the best explanation I can give. There's just other guys who I think bring more talent in terms of like projectable traits, but Perot still does have a pretty smart mind for making the right play a lot, and that might just not carry as much value for a lot of scouts. Okay, first, any overage players that have taken a step and should be drafted this year? Second, who other than Crystal do you have higher or lower significantly compared to the industry list? First, the overage players or re-entries or whatever you want to call them that have taken a step. I mean, I still think Cole Knuble deserves a draft pick. Eric Polkamp is probably the best example I can give you of a guy who I thought last year showed a lot of flashes with Cedar Rapids. Like, he was quick on his feet and pretty skilled and a pretty good shot from the point, but it wasn't really going in for him very much. It wasn't really working out. I watched a few games last year and I sort of went, okay, like, I love how this guy skates, and if you have a late round pick and you want to draft a guy just based on his skating ability, Eric Polkamp is probably not a bad choice. But this year, he's more agile, he's more skilled, he's a better shooter. I think he's more aggressive. He's taking on more risk and really challenging opponents better, which I really, really like about him. I think Polkamp is probably the best example I would give for a player that's legitimately taken a step. And other than Crystal, who do I have higher or lower significantly than a consensus list? So let's just sort my rankings by consensus. So I've got Braden Yeager at 34. I've got Colby Barlow at 44. I've got Callum Ritchie at 39. I've got Matthew Wood at 40. The rest are all kind of similar. I've got Danny Nelson on my watch list, but he's ranked in the early second for a lot of people. Sturbach and Bonk are in my early third round, but they're in sort of the mid-second for most people. Who do I have ranked significantly higher? I got Edward Shale at 22, and the average right now is 11. Dalibor Dvorsky I have at 27, the average is 12. I've got Oliver Moore at 5, average is 14. Sandin Pellikka I've got at 7, average is 19. Simishev I've got at 10, average is 22. Jaden Perron I have at 11, average is 25. Let's see what else we've got. I mean, I've got Oscar Fisker Molgaard at 24, and there's not enough people ranking him to have him as an average. Same for Martin Mishak. I have him at 26. So that's just the way it is. I have a feeling... Oh, Grav is here. Hello, Grav. Good evening. I have a feeling Barlow goes top 8 this year, and we're just all going to have to deal with it. Yeah, I mean, look, Colby Barlow certainly he's not a bad hockey player. Like, you know, Colby Barlow just, to me, checks a lot of boxes that I think teams trip over themselves with. I look at him at 5-on-5, and I still struggle to see a guy who can consistently drive results offensively and defensively. Really great shooter, though. Like, what Colby Barlow does really well is he has a great sense of puck protection with his body, and he has a quick couple of steps so that he can just gain a bit of space, and he has a great release that he can score with. But again, I no matter what happens with any player who goes out there and scores a lot of goals and has not that many assists, to me, that is an analytical red flag. Like, the number of guys where that just has not worked out in the NHL is far greater than the number that have worked out. The ones that come off the top of my head are like Anthony Mantha, but like I'm thinking Matt Pumple, who else are some of these guys? They definitely exist. I mean, I could go and fetch them all, but definitely a thing. But yeah, but I mean, look, if Barlow goes top 8, I wouldn't do it. Would I draft Colby Barlow in the late first round? Sure. Like, I could see him being a third line guy that you put on the power play and he can score some points for you there, and you keep him in sheltered minutes, then sure, I could see that. Yeah, Julian Gauthier, someone mentioned that as well. He was another one. But yeah, I mean, look, if Colby Barlow goes 8, I'm happy to draft someone else at 9. What were your thoughts on Dach in his draft year? I loved Kirby Dach in his draft year. He was a guy where he was like insanely hot to start the year and then went ice cold for like a third of the season and then went hot again for the end of the year. I really liked Kirby Dach. He was a guy who I felt didn't look like he was putting in as much as he could, because he kind of didn't need to. Just like the skill was really, really high end and just knew what to do a lot of the time. A little bit of a me first player, I felt, but I wasn't surprised to see him go third overall, and I was thrilled. I really, really like Kirby Dach and still do. I liked him and still do. And at the time of the draft, I think I had him at 3 or 4. I don't remember. I'd have to go and look, but it was pretty high. Is there a prospect that comes to mind that you liked a lot but thought that the NHL teams never gave them a good chance? Probably. I mean, right now that player is Zach Jones to me with the Rangers. It blows my mind that Ben Harper is playing with the Rangers and got a contract extension while Zach Jones is just torching the AHL right now. I was watching a bit of him earlier, just destroying on defense there, and so that's a player that comes to mind right away. Who else? I'd have to think about that. That's a good question, but the first one that comes to mind is one that's happening right now, and I think that would be Zach Jones. Danton Danielson, hello. Jaden Perron, do you think he engages his body enough in tight areas, battles to retrieve, protecting the puck, etc.? In my viewings, that's a weakness. Am I just watching the wrong games? No, I think you're right. I think he's a much better transition defender rather than like a cycle and board defender. But like, I don't know. Is that really your expectation of him, right? Like, the things that he's not a physical player, and I don't think he ever will be. He's much more of a stick checker. You know, I do think Jaden Perron has flaws that could significantly limit his ability to play in the NHL as well as he's playing in the USHL. But I do think that there's a lot enough to like that he just really figures it out, even if he's not the most physical guy. I think protecting the puck, he does that pretty well. But I do agree that in tight spaces, if he doesn't find a passing option, he really struggles to escape that pressure with his own feet. I think he's a quick guy, but he's not necessarily like agile and adaptive. But he's very, very good at threading passes through guys and all that stuff. I don't know. There's a lot to like about Jaden Perron, but those things that you highlighted, you're not crazy, I guess is what I'm saying. That those things are a bit of a weakness, but it's about weighing them properly when there are a lot of benefits in his game. Have you watched Evgeny Volokin yet? I have. I liked him. Haven't seen a ton, but I liked what I saw. The Leafs under Dubas tend to go for high IQ players, but had a strong second half. Who stands out with a high IQ that could jump out second half of the season to move into late first for Toronto? Grayson Sachin? That's a really good option right there. I mean, if Toronto, I don't think Dalibor Dvorsky will be available there yet, but that would be a great option there. Who else? Gabe Perreault could be an interesting one. Tom Willander, I think, could also be a really interesting one. He seems to be heating up a little bit as the season goes on. Edward Chalet, if he really falls in the draft, maybe Edward Chalet is an interesting pickup for them. There could be some good options in the late first if that's what they're looking for. Knowing full well it's not sustainable, are you surprised by Raphael Harvey-Pinard's early success at the NHL? Yeah, but like pleasantly surprised. I've loved Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Like, you can go back in my channel, I think it was the 2018 draft, where there were undrafted players that really probably should have been drafted. Maybe 2019, probably 2019, and Raphael Harvey-Pinard was on that list. I've always liked him. He's undersized but rambunctious. He's a great example of a smaller player that you never want to count out. Like, when I look at players that are small, he checks a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for, where at the worst case scenario, is he capable of outplaying a 6'2" schlub on the fourth line in the NHL? My answer would be yes, and I think we're seeing little tastes of that. I like him a lot. You give him a chance, you give him some reps, and things hopefully work out. Alex Chiernik's recent success with his new team in the Allsvenskan. What do you think? I love it. We talked about it earlier, but I love it. I think he's a great player. If he's not gone in the first round, then I'm thrilled to get him in the second round. Like, if my second round is, say, Otto Stenberg and Alex Ciernik, I am very happy. Especially if my first round pick is maybe, I don't know, Gulyayev or Simashev. Like, there's a lot of interesting players this year, and The guys that could slip to the second round could be really interesting pickups. Is one of your tier 3 guys dropped? If one of your tier 3 guys dropped to the late first round, would you use an early second and third to move up? So that would probably, in my tier 3, that's Carlson, Benson, Moore, Michkov, Sandin, Pelika, Crystal, Smith, and Simishev. I would think the only names likely to be maybe there in the late first would be Crystal and Simishev. So I can only speak from the perspective of, say, let's call it team scouting. I have a late first round pick and 2 third round picks. Would I trade the late first round pick and a third round pick to move up from, say, 28 to 26 to draft Andrew Crystal if he was still on the board? Potentially, sure. I do think in that third round there could be some good players available still there, but yeah, potentially I could do that. An early second and a third round pick, if that's what it costs for a guy like Andrew Crystal or a Dmitry Simishev, who I also really like, then sure, I could do it. It would be nice, but I don't know, like, is Andrew Crystal a guy that slips to the second round? I don't think that's impossible either. It could be an interesting day on draft day, I would say. My diaphragm is sore. The actual body part, the thing below your ribs, sore. I'm talking too much. What's up with Dalibor Dvorsky? Seems to be sliding on some lists. What's your take on him? I've always been cooler on Dvorsky since the beginning of the season, my friend. And I've been not yelling it, but cautiously sort of going, I don't know about this, like, all year. Look, I think his issues have been not exacerbated, but illustrated. He wasn't a necessarily overwhelmingly impressive player at the World Junior, I don't think. I think he showed good traits, and I think he showed what kind of a player he can be. But I think he lacks a lot of traits that make a high-end prospect truly high-end. When I watch him at the Hockey Allsvenskan level, I see a player who has a lot of smarts, I think knows when to pass the puck, knows who to pass the puck to, knows how to get it there safely, keeps it safe and stable at 5-on-5 in a good way, but the foot speed is a major problem. He doesn't penetrate the inside of the ice at 5-on-5 at all, very much, like at all, unless he does not have the puck and he sort of just floats in and someone doesn't catch him. But he's a smart player. Like, you worry about what happens past Hockey Allsvenskan, where the pace gets ratcheted up and foot speed matters a little more. Like, if he's going to get closed out a lot, is he going to be able to adapt to that pressure, make a play, and make that read at a quicker pace? I'm not sure. Like, my whole thing is, if I'm drafting in the top 10, how scared am I to say the player's name? And if my team is like Dvorsky, and I'm me sitting there, I am a little bit scared to draft him in the first 10 picks of the draft. Is he a first round pick? Yeah, I think so. Like, I think you could get a good third line possession center that can play on your power play to shoot the puck, and that could be a decent role for him in the NHL. Beyond that, you could make the development argument, sure, for sure. But, like, whenever I've seen him really go full flight up the ice, try to carry it end to end, the skill level kind of isn't there. So to me, you're hoping that not only does his pace increase and the level of speed he can generate increase, but the skill increases as well. And he can tether those two things together to push guys more on their heels and drive into the inside a little bit more, or at least get a little deeper into the offensive zone to make a play. Because I've seen him a lot of times cross that offensive blue line, lob it on net, rim it around the corner and hand it over to the goalie or something like that. And that's just not, to me, that's just not generating a ton of offense for him. And I think that's indicative in his point production. I mean, he is not scaling with guys like Elias Pettersson in terms of scoring at that level at this age, right? Like, he's just not. He's in line with more like a Jakob Olofsson or I'm trying to think of other Hockey Allsvenskan guys that have been drafted that aren't scoring a point a game. It's not a bad league, but I think it is very clearly showing what his weaknesses are. Someone else asked later why I bumped him up, and it sounds like I'm more negative on him, but honestly, I bumped him up because the game I just watched of him today was really good. Like, he he isn't, again, like, you have to appreciate him for what he is. And I don't think he's going to be a huge point producer, but I do think he's going to play in the NHL. Really smart puck manager, knows how to do the right thing at the right time. Gets the puck to its destination well enough outside the offensive zone, especially. Really good defensive instincts as well. There's a lot to like. Do you know what happened to Michael Fisher? I can't find any information on Google about an injury, and most results are for the Nashville player. I have no idea. I don't have any info on that. Did Anaheim fail taking Gaucher, Warren, and Luneau last year when none of them have extremely high ceilings, while leaving Kulik, Howard, Casey, Hudson, Goyette on the board? I mean, I don't know about fail, but they bunted the picks. Like, they bunted. Like, Nathan Gaucher is fine. I feel like he's going to play in the NHL, like maybe in a depth role, third line, whatever. Noah Warren, I thought drafting Noah Warren that high was a little bit crazy. Tristan Luneau, I mean, he's better this year, but I never really saw like a great defenseman last year. If I am Anaheim, would I rather have guys like who you mentioned? Probably. But I get the feeling that they're going to just put those guys in the lineup no matter what happens. And the two defensemen you mentioned, they might be able to tread water defensively. And Nathan Gaucher, like, he can play an NHL role. There are jobs for guys like Nathan Gaucher. It's not glamorous, but it could happen, and it depends on what you consider a successful draft pick, right? Like, if you want just a hockey guy who can hit and skate, Gaucher can be that guy, right? Is that necessarily what I chase in the first round of the NHL draft? Not really, but you got to pick and you get to keep your job because coaches are going to play a guy like Nathan Gaucher every single night if he's at all capable of keeping up in the NHL, which I think he could be. Moore versus Nazar. I like Moore more, but they're similar. Like, there are echoes there of a similar player, but I like Moore a little bit better. I think the skill level is a little better. He's able to transition the puck a little better than Nazar. I like Moore a lot. What do you think about Grayson Sachin? He's great. We've talked about him a bunch already. Did you see that when Hoyt Stanley was drafted in the WHL in 2020, he was listed at 5'7"? He's this year's Owen Pickering. That's true. Hoyt Stanley is with the Victoria Grizzlies, and he is 6'2" now. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a bit bigger. He's a lanky boy, and he plays like he's 5'9". Like, he's a skilled guy, but again, with Hoyt Stanley, like, he's on my short list for like a late round pick. I haven't heard much said about him, but I like him a lot. I don't know exactly where I have him ranked. I forgot. If he's a player who is still just growing into his body, I wouldn't be surprised because he can be a little bit awkward at times. But, I mean, he's ranked in my third round. And if you can get him in that range, third, fourth, fifth round, I think you've done really well. Ceiling and floor for Matt Wood. Middle six offensive winger who can throw his weight around for a ceiling, maybe. And floor, decent AHL scorer. Like, I feel like Matt Wood, if he doesn't develop as well as people hope, I don't know if he's going to play. But I like Matt Wood. Oh, excuse me. I like Matt Wood okay. He's fine. But I just don't see... Like, he scored a ton of points in the BCHL, but I feel like he did that because he's just big and protects the puck pretty well and shoots pretty well. I don't know. I struggle with Matt Wood still. Best stay-at-home defenseman, and where should he be taken? I mean, on paper, I would say Tom Willander, because that's just kind of how he plays. But I kind of want him to take a little more risk and play a little more offensively. But as he is now, he kind of stays at home and chills and does his thing. I think in terms of projection, I might throw David Reinbacher in there just because I think his defensive game is what's going to be more important in the NHL. But he can shoot the puck really well. Like, a lot of his production this year comes from shooting the puck. It goes on net. Something happens. Bob's your uncle. He gets a point. Right? And I feel like that's fine. But to me, that doesn't necessarily mean he's like an offensive defenseman, right? He's very much a pass-first guy in the games I've done. coming out of the defensive end, entering the offensive zone. He's passing the puck more often than not. I would say Reinbacher could be up there. I mean, Simishev might be up there too. I feel like but when I hear shutdown defenseman, I hear like that's what he does. Whereas when I look at Simishev, I go, yeah, this guy could not only be a good shutdown defenseman, but he also has offensive tools. He could score points. Like this guy, I saw this guy do a spinorama and, step up from the blue line, do a spinorama and cut right to the middle of the net and try to get one in from in tight. You don't see many 6'5" defensemen even bother trying that, let alone pulling it off. And I want to see more of that. So I think there's more. I think there's more with Simishev to go. But in terms of pure defense, as they are now, I feel like Willander is probably up there, but I might push him in a more aggressive situation. I'd say a sleeper for that is also Jakub Dvorak in Czech Republic. I've liked him quite a bit. But again, and I mean, again, he's like Willander, where I'm sitting there going, yeah, but I feel like I would like to see you push things a little more in the offensive direction. Who on your watch list would you consider to be the closest to making your final list? Danny Nelson and Etienne Morin, probably. If not them, Brady Cleveland, maybe Calum Parker, something like that, if that makes sense. Also, someone mentioned Ty Mueller last week, and I watched him. I like him. He ended up on the watch list. I like him a lot. He was fun to watch. Where do you project Musty in the NHL? I think his ceiling is a top 6 Swiss Army knife. I mean, I would say middle 6 for Quentin Musty. Like, he does a lot of things really well. He skates okay, but he makes plays well, intelligently. He gets to the net well. There's a lot of things that I think he does pretty well. The last game I watched of him was a couple nights ago, and it was just a banger of a game. He was great, funneling pucks inside, taking good scoring chances. Like, I'm not surprised he's scoring more than he was. He might be the most impressive player, most improved player, I should say, over the course of the year. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's an interesting one. For Musty, I don't know about like a first line guy, but maybe like a really good third line guy, or a good sort of second line auxiliary offensive guy that can throw his weight around and play a bit physical, but also move the puck pretty well and get to the net and do all those fun things. Which prospects do you think are most likely to drop significantly in the draft? Where do I start? Crystal, Crystal, Perron, Brindley, Mukhanov, Stenberg, Ciernik, Pinelli. These are all guys that I have ranked high that I think will be available much later. Fisker Molgaard is another one. Mishak, I think, as well. But again, if we want to talk about floors and projectability, I think Mishak is right there. And if you can see that in a player, I feel like a late first round pick is reasonable. William Whitelaw I have in the first round, but I feel like he's going to go in like the third round. There's a few, and you can read between the lines of the types of players that I'm talking about, and take that for what you will. If you were a general manager, where do you start considering taking over Rangers, considering they're risky but have some reward if they hit? Probably third round. That's like, I find that once the third round is kind of like halfway done, most of the players that I'm really excited about are gone. So at that point, it's like, all right, well, let's start thinking. Like, if I don't know about like an Eric Polkamp that early, most re-entry guys, I feel like I would have a really hard time drafting them that early, at least this year. I mean, I really like Dylan Herkoian, but I wouldn't probably draft him in the third round. But again, it depends on who's available, right? Usually for me, re-entry guys might be like 5th, 6th, 7th round swings. But if there is like a really, really good one available in the third round that I didn't think would be available much later, I might go in that direction. But generally, you have more success drafting those guys later on in the draft. Oh, did I lose my spot? I did, didn't I? There it is. Any concerns about Will Smith's pace of play? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's not great, but I'm not super. Look, the way I see Will Smith is pretty clear. I would say if I'm drafting him, I go, yeah, I don't think you're going to be a winger in the NHL. I don't think you're going to be a center in the NHL, but you could be a hell of a winger. You know, like if you alleviate the necessity for him to play a ton of defense and you give him some freedom to like cheat a little for offense, I think you could have a heck of a scorer in the NHL, and that's what's keeping him really high on my list. Right? Like the skill level and the creativity and the shot, like it's great. But I don't think I'd rely on him as a guy through which play flows up the middle of the ice. But I would see it, I would frame it almost as a benefit to him, right? It's like, let's just do what you do best, man. Like, you are an offensive guy, so play freaking offense and just have fun. Go out there, use your skill, use your brain, do what it is you do, and score points. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think he would be really, really good at it. So yeah, on one hand, it is a concern insofar as like if you want him to be like an elite all-around hockey player, that's kind of what holds him back. But you can work around. I think you can work around it based on the other things he's got, and if you kind of alleviate him of some responsibility in certain ways with his role in the NHL. Thoughts on Whitelaw and Barkey, two of my favorite players in the draft. I like them both. They're small, but they're really, really skilled, high-paced guys. I thought Barkey played really, really well at the Top Prospects game. I rewatched most of it the other night. Whitelaw, I think, is one of the most frustrating players in the draft, but I really like him. I want him to be a thing really bad. But I think he's still kind of adjusting to the USHL style of play, and he doesn't really do the whole, like with Shattuck, he could kind of do whatever he wanted because he had other guys on his team that could also just do whatever they wanted, and like Macklin Celebrini and Cole Eiserman. And I think that kind of has changed, and I think he's kind of a little bit lost, but in terms of the talent and the potential, it's enormous. Barkey, I think, plays a much more selfless game, a lot more intense at both ends. But you know, like he's I find that he kind of struggles to evade pressure and get into the offensive zone with control and set up consistently. But boy, he is certainly a lot of fun to watch. If you had to make a top 10 of the 2022 and 2023 draft, how would it look? Bedard, Fantilli, Cooley, Carlson, Shane Wright, Benson. Who else? Slavkovsky? No. Lambert? No. Moore, Lambert. No. Moore, Michkov, Lambert. Moore, Michkov, Lambert, Slavkovsky. Let's do that. So Bedard, Fantilli, Cooley, Carlson, Wright, Benson, Moore, Michkov. What? I feel like I missed one. Slavkovsky? Oh, God. Something like that. Lambert. So Moore, Michkov, Lambert, Slavkovsky. How about that? Maybe Jiricek over Slavkovsky, but that's tight. I probably would put Slavkovsky first. What timelines do you see for high-pick goaltenders? Askarov, Kosa, and Wallstead. I mean, I imagine Wallstead will compete for a job next season. Kosa, I think, will be another year away at least. Askarov, probably another year. Maybe I imagine he challenges for a job next year, but like, I never am a fan of promoting a young goaltender just to be a backup for a potential Vezina winner, right? Like, you may as well either trade Askarov if you're going to keep Saros indefinitely, or keep him in the AHL for another year. And like maybe you 1A, 1B him with Saros if he's really good next year. But I mean, it gives you the luxury of not having to rush him how I rush him because he's Russian. Ugh. You should check out Valery Sokolov. Oh, call Sokolov. Nah. I'll look him up. Oh, I'm getting a bunch of violinists. Valery Sokolov. Oh, this guy was born in 1964. This guy. Oh, a Belarusian. A 5'6" defenseman. Oh, you have my attention now. 8 points in 31 games in the Belarusian third division. You have my attention now. I want to see this guy. Hey, Will. Hello, Aslan. Do you think Ratu becomes the Canucks' best prospect over Lekaramaki? Yes, but they're probably in the same tier. Like, they're, it's like 1-2. If you want to flip them around, I don't care. But I personally would put Ratu ahead of Lekaramaki, but it's very close. Thoughts on Corey Pronman's latest ranking? Seems insane there's no Brindley or Perron in the top 35. Yeah, well, I don't know. Corey Pronman usually puts out lists that makes people feel crazy, and look, Gavin Brindley, I am on an island about Gavin Brindley. I am shocked that after the World Junior performance he had, that nobody is giving him the time of day as a potential first round pick. Like, I thought he was excellent at the World Junior. And Jaden Perron, he's got flaws, I think. I think he's got problems, but he's still a very talented offensive player. But he's small and lacks a lot of sort of high-end, really, truly high-end skating ability. And I feel like that automatically downgrades him for a lot of people. But Brindley, I honestly think if Brindley just had 22 points instead of 17, he would be right up at the top of a lot of lists. I think he's awesome hockey player. Should Dragicevic become a forward? I'm not against that idea. Ray bro, hello. Welcome to remember to stay hydrated with a cup of water. Yeah, I do have that. I'm sucking this back more, this Pure Life trash. Not the best carbonated beverage I've ever had. Solid C. It's C. If I was in jail and they served that, I'd be like, oh, this is pretty luxurious. This is pretty decent. But I don't want it on the outside. I don't want, we have a whole case of it, but I don't want it. But I'm going to drink it anyway. I don't want to, but I'm going to drink it because it's there and I can't help myself. Have we talked about Josh Waugh today? We did very briefly in the context of Gabe Perreault. I'm going to say that counts and move on, Seb. What's with Braden Yeager? He seems very inconsistent. He's either very good or invisible or turns it over like crazy. Well, it depends on what you mean by very good, because when I see Braden Yeager, I see a player who, when you say inconsistent, I say, well, there's certain things in the game that he does very well, but that list is relatively short in terms of a top NHL prospect. But there are things that he does very well. The data I have on him is extraordinarily mixed, pretty much across the board. I don't know. It's time where I circle back on Yeager again. It's been a while, so I should probably do that soon. And I will. But yeah, not ideal. Again, am I going up in the top 10 drafting Braden Yeager? Probably not. I feel like that would be a lot of risk, and you're hoping for a lot of things to get better. I just have not seen it. Hey, Will, how would you rate Musty in the think category? Well, I can probably just tell you, because I think I have him rated already. Musty. Oh, I don't. It hasn't been that long since I watched him, but I would probably give him I don't know, 2B, something like that-ish. Maybe a 1D, something in that range. Thoughts on Denton Matejchuk's development? Honestly, I have not seen much of Matejchuk this year at all, so I can't give you a good answer on that. Do you think Adam Fantilli wins the Hobey Baker? I hope so. It'd be a lot of fun. He's been excellent. And the last game I did of him was excellent. The game I did of him this week was just, I did, again, with Dvorsky and Ciernik, I did, on the same day, I did a game of Carlson and then Fantilli. Never going to convince me that Leo Carlson should go before Adam Fantilli. You're never going to do it. I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. Fantilli played fantastic. Carlson was much more quiet. But Fantilli, he rocks. He's quick. He's skilled. He can shoot the crap out of a hockey puck. He can be physical. He's simplifying things when he needs to a little bit more from the last couple times I've seen him. Early in the year, he was trying to do too much on his own. He wasn't really taking good reads of the ice. At the World Junior, he kind of did that as well along the boards on the wing. But the last game I did, I think, was one of the first games back since the World Junior, and he just looked great. So, yes, fully on board with the Fantilli thing, and I hope he wins the Holby Baker. I don't know who else could compete with him. I'm sure there's legitimate competitors for him, but I just want him to win. I know goalies aren't your specialty, but who do you see as the better goaltender for the future, Demko or Skinner? I am not answering that question. I have no idea. I've heard rumors the QMJHL will look into reducing its number of teams in the post-Courteau era. The commissioner is retiring. If it happens, we might end up seeing a more competitive league. Yeah, I mean, look, I think every CHL league needs to get a little smaller, personally. I know, I get it. Look, I know. Like, I have been to rural Ontario, like, countless times, and I know how important hockey is to communities that are outside the GTA and everything. Like, it is a major community focal point, and losing an OHL team would be bad. It would be bad. But for the good of the game, I get the feeling that if Canada wants to stay competitive, they either need to institute some sort of national team program for the best of the best players in this country, whisk them off to some Hockey Canada development facility, and they tour around Canada playing OHL, CHL teams. And then after they turn 18, there's some draft, they go to their CHL teams, and off they go. Or you contract the leagues or whatever. But to me, it's way too diluted, right? Like the CHL is just way too diluted. And Junior A, to me, like Junior A should be a more attractive route for more players that would be normally in the CHL, right? To me. Because, like, yes, on one hand, if you're a depth OHL person, like, you get a bursary to go to a Canadian university. Great. Like, that's great. That's awesome. Love to go to school. If you go to the Junior A, like, you can go to like a pretty good US college on a US scholarship, and like that could be an attractive option that like, I mean, it's a more expensive piece of paper, but it's still just paying for a piece of paper. Like, I don't know, it's maybe two sides of the same coin, but I don't know. Like, I just feel like with kids and everything, like it might not be so bad over the long term. Did you track Ty Mueller and Matt Capone? I watched them. I really liked Matt. I really liked Ty Mueller. Capone, I wasn't as sold on, but I really liked Ty Mueller. Is Jeremy Wilmer finally worth a pick despite him being 5'7" and very thin? I still am not sure. Wilmer is a guy that I certainly would invite to a camp, and if he goes through college unsigned, maybe an AHL deal, but I am still very skeptical of Jeremy Wilmer's NHL upside. Any UFA to B NCAA guys caught your eye at this point of the season? Any upcoming derby this summer? That's a great question. I haven't really thought about it that much, but I'm sure there are some that I would recognize. I'm sure there are some that I would recognize. I mean, I doubt that Ryan McAllister leaves early, but he's a guy that I'd probably look at. I've always liked Austin Swankler. He's a guy who was on my list of re-entry players that should get drafted. I liked him last year. He's not quite done college yet, but he's a guy I might see what's going on. Colin Graff is another one that I really liked, but again, he might still have a few more years left in college before he leaves. Is Matt Brown the same one I'm thinking? Yeah, Matt Brown I've always been a fan of, and he might be a guy that I would give a contract to, unless he wants to go back for a fifth season. But I've really liked Matt Brown over the years. I think he was on my list in 2017. Maybe? No, he wouldn't have been. But in 2018, I remember watching him. Or no, what was it? 2019 with Des Moines was when I first saw him, and I thought he was awesome. And he's been good in college the whole time. So he might be a guy that I look at. What else? Is that really why Austin Swankler could play in the NCAA? Because of an error? That's hilarious. I've been wondering about that, like, literally for years with Swankler, but that is hilarious. Who else is on this list that might be an option? I mean, those are the names I think that come to mind, and I don't want to sit here scrolling through this list for an hour, so we'll say those guys just to follow up. Swankler, Brown, and Graf. And I would see what they want to do. McAllister as well. Maybe he wants to leave early. I doubt it. It's his freshman year. He might want to stick around. How has your view on Ratu changed since being drafted? It hasn't really changed. I mean, I always knew he was kind of flawed, but I knew he was going to score points. And like, I feel really good about my read on him because people were like, oh, maybe he's a mid-round pick. You know, I don't know if he's a first-round pick. I think he sucks. And my whole thing was like, well, I watch him play, and I'm just like, man, this guy, I think he just needs a hug and a therapist. Like, this guy just, I will never forget for the rest of my life. Well, maybe not the rest of my life, but for a long time, I will never forget watching Atu Ratu play in the Liga. He was in front of the net with a glorious scoring chance, wide open net, and he skied it from like 5 feet out. It just like bloop up into space, right? And I just went, oh no, like this isn't what an elite goal scorer is supposed to look like. Like but it's like, it's not like he completely forgot how to play hockey at all. So for me, I mean, my read on him hasn't really changed. He's still sort of coming along. I think he's only 20, right? Like, it's still early. But he's done a lot better in the AHL than I thought he would. He got better in Liga way faster than I thought he would. It just took, again, I said he might need a new team. He might need just a different setting to be in, and it clicked. It seems to have clicked. So cool. And that was just something that was in my gut for the whole season of like, I don't think he's actually that bad, but he hasn't been great, which is very strange. Do you think Nathan Villeneuve will be drafted next year? Yeah, I think so for sure. I like Nathan Villeneuve, especially now in Sudbury. Like, they've changed their coach. I think he's gotten better over the course of the year. I watched a bit of him last year for the OHL draft, and I wasn't over the moon about him, but then there was talk of him maybe being the top pick last year. Or no, not the top pick, but one of them that wasn't named. One of them that wasn't named Michael Misa. But yeah, I think he'll get drafted next year for sure. Strathman or McCarthy? Strathman every day, baby. Let it ride. Cowboy hockey. Who are some prospects you could see moving at the deadline? Perhaps disposable names for serious cup contenders. Ooh, I don't know. I can't give you a good answer on that right now. What did you think of Barkey from the Knights? I love Denver Barkey. I've liked him for 2 years. I hope for the best for him. I thought he played really well at the top prospects game. Skilled, fun to watch, creative. Not perfect, but does a lot of fun stuff really well. Oh, this is the question of the night. Best generation of Pokemon games. I'll be disappointed if you don't say 3. 2. Gold and Silver. Gold and Silver are the best. I don't care what anyone says. I really, again, this might also be me in the minority. I really enjoyed Legends. I really enjoyed it. It's nothing like other Pokemon games, but I like that. I mean, it's a game where when I'm on a flight and I just pull out my Nintendo Switch and I boot up Arceus, like, hours just evaporate, you know? Just, it's kind of, like, some of the gameplay is really frustrating. Like, you know, getting around from place to place can be cumbersome and annoying, but once you sort of get your feet going, the story is also terrible. I don't even know what the story is. I don't really care. But that's also the case with most Pokemon games. Like, who cares? Who gives a crap about the story? But I like Arceus quite a bit. I liked X and Y. But to me, Gold and Silver takes the cake. I loved it. I still remember the feeling finishing the first 8 gym leaders, and I think you went through a Pokemon League, and then you got the chance to go through the original 8 gym leaders. I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. It might be one of the 5 happiest moments in my entire life when I realized that was what was happening in that game. I just could not believe it. And it was the coolest thing in the whole world. And then you fought Ash Ketchum at the end, and it's like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever with his like level 77 Pikachu. It was great. I had a ton of fun with those games. I think I only played Gen 3 very briefly, and then after that I kind of fell off because I was playing cool games like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare. I'm just kidding. I'm half joking. Mostly it was because I went to college and had no time to play video games. At least for the first year. Second year I fell off the wagon and got an Xbox, and that was it. if the Canucks do draft, say, around 14, what are some names you would hope to be there? Sandin Pellikka, Simishev, Brindley, Gulyayev would be fun in Vancouver. Stenberg, but that would be a reach. Maybe Riley Height. Quinton Musty would be fun in Vancouver too. There's going to be some fun options for sure. Are NTDP players overrated because their production is carried by teammates? Well, I mean, they're the best Americans out there for a reason. I do think this year there's a strong group of non-NTDP Americans for sure, but the best NTDP players, I think, this year are some of the best players in the world at this age. Moore, Moore, I would say, is up there. Smith, I'd say in certain areas is definitely up there too. Leonard, I'd say, is a little further back, but he does some stuff really, really well. But like deeper down the list, deeper down the list, I think, deeper down the team, I think it drops off with this year's team. Like I'm not super high on any of their defensemen. I kind of like Alex Weirmeyer at times, sure. Ryan Fine is fine most of the time. I have him on my watch list now. He's been decent. Danny Nelson, sure, I don't mind him, but you know, if they're third, fourth round picks, I'm not sure I would do that. This week, Boston University and the prospects updated Lane Hutson's height to 5'10". His bone growth things seem to be real. Imagine that, huh? You know, like imagine players keep growing, and imagine again, like is that really what everyone is so concerned about? Like this is my Michael Scott Pez dispenser. This thing is maybe what, 3 inches tall? Like, well, maybe a little more, maybe 4 inches. You know, like I'm 6 feet tall. Take off a Michael Scott Pez dispenser from my head, and I am 5'8". Is that really like what we're really that concerned about? Like, to me, that just seems like this. This is what we're worried about. This. There's no candy in here, unfortunately. I ate it all. It is a big Pez dispenser. It's huge. It's really big. But Michael Scott, he's a big man. No, Steve Carell is short. I don't know. Whatever. You get my point. Maybe we remove the head and it's maybe closer to 3 inches, right? I don't like where this discussion is going, so I'm going to keep moving on. Does Leo Carlson's choppy stride and hunch indicate a lack of lower body athleticism? If so, is that a big red flag? No, I don't think so. I do think his skating stride is kind of inefficient, but I get the feeling that the skill level he's got and the physical resilience he's got is enough to make up for it. And like you can work on that stuff, you know. I don't know if it's so much it's maybe more of a mechanical thing, but I don't think it's that much of a big deal, personally. I think you take your time with him, you send him back to Sweden for a year, I think you'll be okay. Who do you like for the Red Wings? Whoever you like. I don't know. It depends on where the Red Wings are drafting and who goes in front of them. I mean, I feel like Oliver Moore would make a good Red Wing. I've been waiting for them to land a person in the draft who can play up the middle, like with a Dylan Larkin style. They have a lot of wingers. They got a lot of defensemen. Like they've got a lot, but that depth up the middle, I think, is still a bit lacking for Detroit. And I think a guy like Oliver Moore would really help. Especially he might be there in that range that they're drafting potentially. And after him, like there's not a ton of centers that I'd like really clamor for with really high upside personally. Meh. What are the issues with Wood's skating and how easy or hard do you think it'll be for him to improve? I mean, like it's not great. It's just very clunky and not very efficient. It seems like he's not particularly strong in terms of forward strides. It's tough. I don't know. I feel like with Wood, the skill level is more of the problem. Like it's not. I don't know. Like I think he gets away with a lot just because of him being large and doesn't panic under pressure, and has good body positioning. I don't know. It's gonna be tough. It's a tough projection for him for me. But I feel like he's a guy who could just grow into his body and just get better and better every year and make me look silly. He's a tough one to read, and There's just other guys that have shown me more now. Can you compare and contrast Karlsson and Fantilli's play styles and player roles for both? I mean, they're both. I said this in my latest Substack, but if they learned the best parts of each other's games, they would be amazing players. Fantilli with Karlsson, I think Fantilli needs to play a little better under pressure. Fantilli, can skate himself into unwinnable situations a little bit much, although the last game he didn't do that nearly as much as I've seen him do it before. And just play with a little more resilience. Whereas Karlsson is kind of the opposite, where he has that resilience. He can play physical. He can challenge guys one-on-one confidently and with one skill move get through them and just drive through them with pressure and body positioning. But the pace of his game is not nearly what Fantilli's is. The finishing ability just is not nearly what Fantilli's is, in my opinion. It's good, but they both, like, if I could mash them together into one hockey player, not only would he be 12 feet tall, but he'd be tremendous, I think. I know you probably answered this, but who do you see the Canucks drafting with their firsts? Again, I don't know. Like, so much depends on who goes in the draft. I would personally love to see a guy like Andrew Crystal in Vancouver. I'd love to see a guy like Dmitry Simashev in Vancouver. I'd love to see Gavin Brindley in Vancouver. I like the Vancouver Canucks. I love their aesthetic. They're a fun team to watch when they're good. Vancouver Canucks fans are amazing. So I just would love to see them figure it out. And I don't really care what it takes. Just draft good players who are fun and bring some fun back to Vancouver. How many Michael McCarron and Logan Browns of this world have been drafted to finally see a Tage Thompson flourish? A lot. And that's why the talk about the next Tage Thompson is always kind of silly. Will await words of wisdom if available on some unknown and possibly unlikely to be drafted guys. Anthony Romani, James Petrovsky, and Deegan McMillan. I actually watched Petrovsky and McMillan this week. I think you mentioned them last week. I don't know. McMillan, I'm not sold, really. I didn't see much there. Some decent skill, decent shooter, but not a WHL I'm clamoring for. Petrovsky, he was the guy that played for Flint and got traded, I believe, right? Let me double check that. So he's with Owen Sound now. Again, I just came away thinking he was fine. I wasn't really blown away with what I was seeing out of Petrovsky. Can't really tell you what I liked or didn't like. He just was a capable OHL defender. And again, like, who are they going to bump out of the way on my list for me to draft that I like? There aren't that many guys. Can you name the 3 players outside the first round that if you're a scout at the GM table, you're banging the table for? Timo Mukhanov, Gavin Brindley, Otto Stenberg if he's there, Alex Siernik if he's there, Luke Pinelli. There's going to be a lot this year, I think. Fisker Molgaard is another one. Oscar Fisker Molgaard. But like pounding the table in the second round if they're there. I mean, Crystal if he's there, 100%. Perron, Brindley, Mukhanov, and Stenberg, I would say, are the guys where if they're in the second round, I'm pounding the table. Where do you see the next big talent drop off after the top 4? I'd say 20-ish is where it kind of like becomes very wide. That's usually the case every year. I just think this year's top 20 is very good. And then it kind of goes into a big group of very interesting players, and then it kind of drops off in like the early mid-second kind of thing. You're named leader of the free world, Scouching Command. That's a terrible idea. I don't know who did that, but that's a bad idea. After ending all wars, ending world hunger, and fixing the environment, what are the 3 things you would do to make junior hockey in North America better? Oh my God. Well, I mean, if I'm king of the world and I can do whatever I want, I would abolish the NHL draft and make NHL teams have the ability to have their own academies, like European sports. Basically take the NHL and turn it into a Premier League model. Like, transform the sports hierarchy into an English football or international or club football style thing. where you have reserve teams that play each other. Teams can sign players. Teams can swap players. Obviously you'd need other rules, but to me, junior hockey in North America, I think the states are doing it pretty well as is. You've got 20 teams, a national program. Canada, 60 teams is just too many, especially when you also have junior A on top of it. It's just a lot. And I also feel like it is very strange that we have drafts for 15 and 16-year-old boys to send them wildly different locations than what they're used to just to play hockey. To me, I think that's wrong. And I feel like we should have either CHL teams with academy systems that they nurture their own talent with and can sell players to other teams or whatever, or the NHL absorbs them. That's what I would do. Not draft eligible guys, but are you familiar with Ryland Mosley or David Sillier? No, I am not, but I will write their names down and give it a check. How fun would it be if we get CHL versus USHL champion? I'd love it. I'd love it. I would love to see a US Canada Junior Super Series too. They used to do Canada Russia. I don't know why they're not doing Canada US. Thoughts about people complaining about gas prices? I don't know. I don't give a crap about gas prices. Like, I don't know. They're not that bad these days, is it? Like, I don't know. Like, if gas is $1.20 a liter and if gas is $1.40 a liter, like, the difference in your final bill is, like, let's say you have a 40-liter gas tank. That's 20 cents a liter. 40 times 20 is $6. That's like no, that can't be a $6 difference. Anyway, I'm losing track of where I'm going here. But I don't know. I feel like in this day and age, gas should be expensive. Like, tax gas, right? We tax cigarettes to the teeth. I know gas is important for the functioning of an economy, but you could put that money to good use. And here in Ontario, they've suspended gas taxes for quite a while. Things in Ontario aren't going so great. So I don't know, maybe it might be time to, encourage moving off of guzzling gas. And there's a lot of cars out there that are just not built to be very fuel efficient, that people are just ripping around in. But anyway, explain the +4 bump for Dvorsky. I think we went over that. Is Chalet a high floor, low ceiling type player? I think the opposite. I don't know. There's a chance he doesn't play, I think, but I still have faith. Maybe not a high ceiling, but like a moderate ceiling, low floor. Will Justin Gill get drafted? Yes, I know the Q sucks, but guys who produce like this in their +2 tend to get drafted. I don't know. Maybe. I wouldn't do it. I am never a fan of drafting +2 guys out of the CHL. They got to go straight into the AHL. And again, there's always going to be guys that are 17, 18 years old that I will draft ahead of a guy that's 19 against junior competition in Canada. Did you watch any of the World Juniors Division 3? Actually, did I? No, I think I watched some 2A. I watched the Croatian team a few times. I think I watched 2B a little bit, but it wasn't very good. NHL players that would be great heels in pro wrestling. Brad Marchand's the easy one. Trevor Zegras, maybe? I don't know. Even crazier is that the Islanders negotiated for protections. Okay, we're talking about that. Whatever. 30-second scouting report on Brindley. We've kind of talked about him a lot. I'm also kind of just racing through these because I'm losing my voice here. Oh my goodness. Sandin Pellikka, NHL comparable, and is he elite? Who should the Canucks' next captain be? I mean, the next captain of the Canucks probably should be Elias Pettersson. But there's no rush. If I'm Vancouver, I go with 4 assistants and just let the team figure it out. There's no rush. But who's Sandin Pellikka's NHL comparable? It's a good question. Maybe Quinn Hughes, something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Best hands in the draft outside of Bedard. I'd say either Will Smith or maybe Matvei Michkov. Maybe. Where do you see Denver Barkey going? 3rd round, maybe 4th round. Nick Patan is a great example of a player who didn't get the proper chances to develop into an NHL player. He played bottom 6 minutes and had great results and couldn't catch a break and then ended up in the minors forever. Thoughts on Pronman's rankings? Thoughts on Marco Rossi? Again, Pronman's rankings are just his thoughts. Like, it's fine. I disagree with a lot of it, but his opinions are just as valid as mine. Maybe more because he actually goes to games and he's in the rink. But, thoughts on Marco Rossi? I hope for the best for him. I don't even know how he's been since going back to the minors, but I'm going to stand Marco Rossi forever and ever until I have passed on from this life. But, yeah, how's he doing? Yeah, I mean, he's over a point per game in the AHL this season. That's pretty good. I don't think there's any rush. Leave him in the AHL for the rest of the year. Just keep letting him just go. Reset next season. That's what I would say. I thought he looked good in the NHL this year, but just things weren't going his way. And I am hopeful. Everyone talks about Michkov's IQ. What kind of NHL player does he remind you of? I don't know. Small Kovalchuk? I don't know. I don't know. With Michkov's, I don't know. Again, with the word IQ, I hate it. I hate the phrase IQ. Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, it's like when someone says someone doesn't skate very well. It's like, well, what do you mean? There's like 9 different scenarios where skating can mean a number of different things, right? When I look at Matvei Michkov, I see a player that comes and goes when it comes to when and how to make plays around the ice. I see a guy who challenges players one-on-one constantly and doesn't win a whole lot of times. It's fun when he does, but he doesn't win every time, and I feel like that's not something that shows really high hockey sense. But when he doesn't have the puck, he knows how to get into space in the offensive zone, make himself a scoring threat. He knows when to bury it. He knows when to just keep it simple and not be complicated and everything. So that all sounds good to me. Could you and the next question, could you give me a sales pitch on Fantilli over Michkov? I mean, Adam Fantilli is bigger. That's one thing. He's more physical, which helps. But his hands are great. He has a great shot as well. He's a good setup man from pretty much anywhere in the offensive zone, like especially along the boards and a perimeter guy. He is just a great north-south guy. You give him the puck in the defensive end, he can get into the offensive end for you and do it with control. Michkov, I'm not nearly as sold on his capability to do that. I think Michkov is much more of a guy you surround with guys that can play with high pace, and he's the guy that is the principal finisher. I will say he's also been a lot better with Sochi than what I have seen before. The last game I saw of him was great. And but I still think that Fantilli, in terms of an NHL player, all situations, really just you pat him on the back and you know what you're going to get out of him every single shift. I think that puts him ahead of Michkov for me. Whereas Michkov, he might score more goals. Like if you put him on a power play, he might score more goals. But I still feel like the overall output from Fantilli will be just more valuable. Is it possible Goyayev drops out of the first round? Yes. Which player in your top 10 falls to the second round? Probably Crystal of anybody? Crystal? Jets have a habit of keeping an eye for value that falls in the draft. Who do you think fits that mold? Luca Pinelli might be one. It's hard to tell, right? Like, I don't know who's going to slip in the draft before the draft happens. Otto Stenberg comes to mind. Edward Chalet, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell this early. Why does Ottawa never take Russians and Tampa never take Swedes? Is that just a regional scouting weakness, or those teams feel those guys drafted later will never come over? I don't know the answer to that. It's probably a personnel thing, but I don't know. Best second round defenseman. Willander, I would say Molendijk if he's there. Cagnoni if he's there. Dvorak, Bo Akey, and Matthew Mania are pretty good. Andrew Strathman could be a nice pickup in the second round. Arvid Bergstrom. Caden Price might be a nice high upside bet in the second round. Even if he hasn't been great this year, I still think there's something there. why do you think, who do you think will be your highest ranked undrafted player come June? I mean, right now it's Dylan Herkoian, but maybe Cole Knubel, maybe Eric Polkamp. I don't know. It's Nikolai Khvorov is also pretty good. Maybe him too. I don't know. Do you think with the Canadian youth scandals, there is an opportunity to reform the overall system? Having a bunch of parallel leagues versus additional higher and lower divisions seems like a mistake. Yes, I agree. Maybe. I doubt it. Because again, you're dealing with communities, and Canada is also very, very big. And everywhere in Canada loves hockey. So you don't want teams in St. John's having to fly all the way to Vancouver to play. That just doesn't make sense. There's just no money for that. I mean, maybe there is. I don't know. CHL teams keep their books pretty closed, but I feel like that's not a very conducive way to play hockey. So for me, I feel like we should have like 3 leagues of 12 teams. You know, keep it small, keep it tight. You have the rivalries. You know, it sucks that you lose some of the communities, but you keep, you know, I don't know. Maybe even split them in half and have a promotion relegation system if you really want to do that. That could be fun. But I definitely do think that there should be like more concentrated talent at the top end of junior hockey in this country. The most shocking reach since you've started doing this, Boucher, Chinikov, Mukhamadullin, or someone else? I'd say Boucher. Tyler Boucher. I never in a million years would have thought, you know what? Yegor Chinikov at 21 or whatever it was. He's probably shocking. He was probably the most shocking there. Who has dropped the most over the season on your list? Caden Price, I think. I legitimately thought Caden Price was going to be the best defenseman in this draft, and he absolutely has not been that. If it were up to you, would you eliminate the 7th round of the draft? No, I don't really mind it. It's fun. You get an extra chance to draft a guy. It's cool. Did Elias Pettersson stand out to you at the World Juniors? Not that one, the one drafted by the Canucks. That's funny. Not really. Here and there a little bit, but not really. Did you end up checking out Linus Lindgren? Not yet. I apologize for the 3rd week in a row, but I promise I will get to Linus Lindgren. I've been meaning to, but I have not seen him. Are the Canucks re-signing Aiden? Are the Canucks re-signing Aiden McDonough? I don't know. I have no idea. If the Habs had, let's say, the 5th and 13th overall pick, who could they realistically get that would have the potential to be a top-line, top-pair player? I don't know. I mean, maybe Oliver Moore or Matvei Michkov and Sandin Pellikka and or Dmitry Simashev or Mikhail Gulyayev. Maybe not Gulyayev, but those two. Olli Jokinen is Ukrain's coach. Really helped Ratu, Hooten, and Puistula and Liam Kirk for development. Good to see him. Most European pro coaches don't give a crap about young players. That's true. Good for him. Olli Jokinen. Who would have thought? Is Lane Hudson on track to be an elite offensive defenseman in the NHL? Maybe not elite, but very good. I get the feeling he's going to be very good. Benson's 5'9" and an average skater, bro, from Grant McKegg. Okay, I don't know, whatever. Looking at the numbers, Bedard is scoring just as fast or even faster than McDavid in the CHL. McDavid also played with DeBrincat and Strome. What do you think it says about Bedard? I think it's great. I mean, Bedard, he's Connor Bedard, right? Like, I mean, he's been fantastic all season. He's been better since coming back from the World Junior. I think the World Junior kind of gave him a shot in the arm. It must have, where it's like, oh, I can do all these other things, and not just do everything myself. But yeah, I mean, is he a more impressive player than Connor McDavid at the same age? I think they're in the same cut from the same cloth, but I get the feeling that McDavid, you know, like, is Connor Bedard going to be the best player in the NHL one day? I think he's going to could be the best scorer in the NHL one day, but I still really just can't imagine someone better than Connor McDavid at the NHL level. Like, that guy seems like a cheat code. And Bedard might be an offensive cheat code, but I don't know if it'll be the same. But we'll see. I can't say it's impossible. Should the Canucks take Sandin Pellikka at 8? You know what? Just because, yes. We'll say yes. On your list, how do you update the stats? I have a Python program that just fetches stuff from elite prospects, and then I manipulate a little bit on the back end and update it every couple of days. Usually early in the year, I'm doing it every day, but I usually update it every couple of days on my list now. Should drafting Keenan Draper be a fireable offense? No, but, you know, this is how it works, right? Like, this is how it goes. That is how the world works. That's, you know, they take the Bo Burnham song and add a bunch of hockey stuff in it. It's pretty much the same. Pretty sure they don't do CHL versus USHL and NTDP because the NCAA considers CHL pro and it's illegal for NCAA junior teams to play pro teams. I mean, I guess, maybe, sure, I don't know. Thoughts on Zane Parekh? I really like him. I liked him a lot last year, watching him in AAA. I liked him a lot. I like Zane Parekh quite a bit. I think he could be one of the more impressive offensive defensemen next year. He's good. What was your take on Danila Klimovich in 2021 and has it shifted? I wasn't a huge fan of Klimovich, and no, it has not shifted. I mean, he's been okay in the AHL. I thought it was a reach when they drafted him there. Pretty big one. I still think there's a ways to go for him. Any decent defensive defensemen? Yeah, there's a few. We've spoken about them earlier. I mean, I put Reinbacher in there. Simashev could play good defense, but also good offense. Tom Willander, Jakub Dvorak, all those ones all come to mind. Theo Lindstein, in a sense. I see a lot of Hudson and Luke Hughes discourse. Who do you prefer? I take Luke Hughes, but Hudson's pretty good. Did you talk about Atu Ratu? Yes, I did. Ottawa once drafted Yashin. Tampa Bay once drafted Hedman. Yeah, we're talking years ago. Does Tiachek get drafted? No, I don't think so. He hasn't had the best season this year. I always love him. I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for Yuri Tiachek, and I hope that one day an NHL team gives him a chance somehow. But I don't think he gets drafted, unfortunately. But it is probably about time to go and check him out. Anyway, I'm going to call it a night, guys. That's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I got to go. Thank you very much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Again, thank you to the sponsors of the show, McKean's Hockey, Marcus Gustafson's Blue Line Hockey IQ program. You can get 10% off with the coupon code Scouching at hockeyIQprogram.com. And you can scan the QR code above my head or use the description link to use my Fanatics affiliate code. So if you want to get anything for you or someone you enjoy the company of in your life or your worst enemy for whatever reason, feel free to use that code. I'll get a little kickback and it supports the channel. So thank you very much. All the best. I am getting my COVID bivalent vaccine next Tuesday, so that'll be fun. Hopefully I make it to next Thursday's stream because I would love to be here. But yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you next week. All the best. And